Under the ashes of time and the forgotten clink of hammers on steel lies a tale that few dare to recall. In a village shrouded by eternal mists, where the winds whisper names never written down, there lived a blacksmith whose creations went beyond metal. They shaped the very essence of the human soul. Klingenberg, lost among the Bavarian mountains, was the setting for a silent pact, where the heat of the forge met the chill of the supernatural. What happens when flames do more than mold iron, when they awaken voices that should never echo? The curse of Klingenberg is absent from any official tome, yet it lives on in the twisted trees that surround the old smithy, in the restless dreams of those who still dwell near its ruins, and in the bones buried in unconsecrated graves. They say the blacksmith's anvil still trembles, centuries after his death. Was he merely a man tormented by pain, or the architect of an eternal damnation? In this video, you will learn the story of the blacksmith who forged souls, the curse of Klingenberg, a journey through the embers of an ancient madness where the past does more than haunt. It forges the sins of the present. The village of Klingenberg, nestled in a cleft between hills draped in dense pine forests, seemed to exist outside of time. In the 13th and 14th centuries, as the great German cities teemed with trade, wars, and religious revolutions, Klingenberg remained motionless, forgotten on maps, as if geography itself wished to protect, or perhaps isolate it from the outside world. It was not only silence that marked the village, but an aura of disquiet, a kind of invisible weight that made travelers turn back even before crossing its aged wooden gates. At the heart of that hamlet stood an unusual edifice, a forge built of black stone, quarried from a nearby pit that, according to legend, never ran dry. Those rocks remained colder than ice, even under the sun, and bore strange markings like worn runes that no one could decipher. It was here that Elias Krantz, the blacksmith, lived. Tall, stooped, with eyes as deep as pitch-black wells, he was a man of few words and nocturnal habits. Rumor had it he never slept. Some swore they saw him still hammering at dawn, his gaze glowing in the darkness like incandescent coals. Elias was no ordinary craftsman. His blades never lost their edge, his chains never snapped, and the horseshoes he forged granted supernatural strength to any steed that wore them. Soon whispers spread. Elias did not forge with common fire, but with a flame he himself conjured, blue, silent, fed by something neither wood nor coal. Some spoke of bones, others of souls. His fame grew, and before long nobles and knights from afar sent messengers to commission his weapons. But with renown came murmurs of a curse. The first sign appeared with Otto Grunwald, a Teutonic knight who wielded a sword forged by Elias in battles across Eastern Europe. Otto won every engagement, yet upon his return, he succumbed to madness. He spent his days locked in his tower, muttering in extinct tongues and inscribing symbols in his own blood. One night, he beheaded himself with his own blade, leaving no sign of struggle. His castle was abandoned and blighted. Others met the same fate. Men who bore Elias's weapons were consumed by visions, despair, or a strange internal combustion, their bodies found charred though no fire had been nearby. The Inquisition launched inquiries, but never captured Elias. Records vanished as if by magic, and those who attempted to interrogate him fell ill swiftly, as though drained by a sudden, incurable anemia. The people of Klingenberg, once shielded by Elias, began to fear him. Children vanished on new moon nights, and always there came the sound of hammering in those pre-dawn hours. The elders claimed Elias no longer forged metal, but sealed pacts. His anvil had become an altar, his forge a portal. Some believed he had sworn an oath with an ancient spirit, perhaps a forgotten Germanic god, or something even older, born from the forest's own darkness. Dreams turned to collective nightmares. Many villagers saw Elias standing in their rooms, watching them in silence with eyes that gleamed in the gloom. Others heard the anvil's echo within their own homes, as though it hammered on their very consciences. The land itself seemed ill. Crops withered without cause, animals were born deformed, and in spring the well's water ran red. Then 3 brothers, descendants of ancient Saxon druids, resolved to act. Hermits living on the forest's edge, practicing forgotten rituals, they had been shunned by the village in fear and scorn. Yet even they felt the imbalance. They claimed the blacksmith had broken the seal of the living iron, a boundary that prevented the dead from invading the realm of the living. Something had to be done, or Klingenberg would cease to exist as reality and become a point of perpetual condemnation. They prepared a final enchantment, fully aware they would pay with their lives. On the longest winter's night, when the moon hid behind a thick veil of black clouds, the 3 brothers entered Klingenberg. The air was motionless, as though the world itself held its breath. Houses were bolted shut, windows sealed with carved wooden symbols and salt strewn across every lintel. Yet no one dared sleep. The village sensed something was coming, something that would transcend time, faith, and reason. The brothers carried an ancient chest of hawthorn wood, bound in silver chains, which contained an ancestral artifact known as the Heart of Silence, a petrified fragment of black amber said to hold the final breath of a fallen god. This was the tool they would use to bind Elias's power, trapping both his soul and his forge in an eternal void. But first, they had to bring him to the anvil and compel him to hammer one last time. They trudged through the swirling snow that fell in slow, hypnotic spirals. Inside the forge, Elias awaited them. He held no hammer, wore no leather apron. He stood upright, hands folded upon his chest like a statue cast in iron. His eyes glowed amber, and a faint, almost compassionate smile played upon his lips. There was no surprise in his expression. He had known they would come. The eldest brother stepped forward and pronounced the sentence in an extinct language reclaimed from the deepest roots of Germanic tradition. The chest was opened, and the Heart of Silence began to pulse, as though alive. An unseen wind swept through the forge, snuffing out all lights except the furnace, which flared into blue flames. Elias's smile widened. Without uttering a word, he picked up the hammer, long untouched, and raised it above his head. Each brother took their place at a point of the pentagram drawn in crow's blood on the floor, and they began to chant a dissonant hymn, full of tones impossible for the human voice to reproduce. At the first strike of the hammer on the anvil, the ground trembled. At the second, the snow melted in a radius of 30 meters. At the third, a shadow burst forth from the furnace, not smoke, but a living entity, twisting through space, screaming with 1,000 voices. It was the essence of the pact, the very soul of Elias laid bare, multiplied across the years in his cursed creations. The shadow writhed to flee, but the Heart of Silence shone with blinding light, dragging it into a luminous abyss. Elias screamed. It was not a human cry. It cracked the stones of the village houses, and church bells miles away rang of their own accord. In that final instant, the blacksmith was consumed by the black amber's light, and with him, the furnace, the anvil, and all that lay around. The brothers fell to their knees. 2 died instantly. The third, blind and deafened, crawled to the village entrance and allowed the cold to claim him, pausing only to bury the chest in a dry well marked with forbidden symbols. The forge vanished that night. In its place lay only a ring of barren earth that never bloomed again. The village tried to carry on, but peace did not endure. Though the hammer's sound ceased, the dreams persisted. And with each generation, a child was born with Elias's eyes, amber eyes. Children with an uncanny knack for metalwork, drawn to fire, obsessed with senseless constructions. One such child, Heinrich, distant grandson of a witness to the events, was found in 1742 at the age of 8, carving tiny skulls from molten lead. When questioned, he said, "The man of the blue fire taught him by night." Soon after, he vanished, leaving only a dagger of black stone behind. The villagers burned his belongings and tried to erase his memory. Yet the cycle had begun anew. The seal had been broken, albeit partially, and the curse adapted. The 19th century brought industrialization even to Bavaria's most remote corners, yet Klingenberg stood frozen, like a painting abandoned in a ruin. The village declined railways, lampposts, and all signs of progress. It was as though something silent and ancient held it fast in its own time. Some blamed geography, others superstition. But those who looked deeper saw in the villagers' eyes a peculiar dread, not of evil to come, but of evil already present. In the village center, the old forge site remained untouched, a place where not even weeds dared to grow. Children wouldn't play there, dogs howled as they passed, and the elders crossed themselves at the mention of the spot. Yet, as with every dormant curse, there were always those who dared approach too closely. In 1879, an archaeology professor, Karl Meinhardt, arrived, seeking traces of pre-Christian cults. During the first authorized excavation in centuries, Karl uncovered something that would change his life forever. The tip of the blacksmith's original anvil buried beneath layers of rock and calcified earth. Upon touching it, Karl fainted. For days he raved in dead tongues, scrawling circular symbols on his cabin walls and whispering the name Kranz in chills-inducing tones. When he regained consciousness, his mind was irrevocably altered. He abandoned science and isolated himself in a shack near the dig site, reconstructing the forge with black stones from the forest. He rekindled a fire, though no one ever saw him purchase coal. The echo of hammering returned. Panic gripped the village once more. They knew what it meant. Elias Kranz's spirit had found a new vessel. But this time it was more than the blacksmith's soul that resurfaced. It was the entire pact. Something deeper, older, stirred in the blue flames Karl had revived. He began forging pieces that defied logic, chains that floated in mid-air, mirrors that reflected no reality, statues that wept blood. Reports poured in of apparitions along the nearby roads, of voices whispering promises in exchange for blood. The forest spread unnaturally, swallowing fields and paths. Animals were born with human eyes. And again, children began to vanish. Some reappeared days later, wandering naked through the woods, murmuring in hoarse voices, their hands burned as if they had touched hell itself. On a particularly cold October night, a burst of blue light rent the sky above Klingenberg. Karl's cabin burned for 7 days without consuming a single stone. When the flames finally died, all that remained was a hammer, the very hammer of Elias, recognized by its rune-etched head and bone handle. The anvil stood again, as if it had never gone, and beside it, a new furnace. The villagers tried to destroy the site, but no metal could harm the structures, nor could fire, water, or prayer. A council of elders decreed the place be sealed with concrete and blessed stone, and made a vow that no one would ever speak of it again. But secrets never stay buried forever. In the 20th century, during the Second World War, German soldiers reported strange happenings nearby. An SS unit specializing in the occult supposedly removed the hammer and took it to Berlin, believing it a supernatural artifact. None returned. After the war, the site drew hermits, esoteric theorists, and seekers of the living iron, the metal Elias claimed he forged with fragments of the human soul. To this day, urban explorers find traces of the old shack and say the furnace can be rekindled if the right blood is spilled upon the stones. Some try, some vanish, others return, but with amber eyes, and so the curse of Klingenberg endures, mutant, persistent, shaped by time yet unbreakable in its essence. Like the iron Elias Kranz forged, not with his hands, but with destiny itself. Klingenberg never became just a village again. It became a silent symbol of something that defies logic and escapes reason. The persistence of evil, molded not in words, but in steel and spirit. The figure of the blacksmith, Elias Kranz, lost between legend and reality, embodies the dark archetype of one who dares transcend human limits, crafting the immaterial at a terrible cost. Yet the most terrifying aspect is not his downfall, but his continuance. For his curse did not perish with him. It merely changed form. The blue flames, the amber eyes, the anvils hammering on windless nights, all remain fragmented in the collective memory, resurfacing whenever time allows. The living iron, the forging of souls, the ancient pact that never shattered. Elements perhaps more symbolic than factual, yet echoing powerfully within the walls of our own psyche. Elias shaped more than weapons. He molded fear, desire, and the temptation to exceed the bounds of flesh and soul. Perhaps that is the true curse, the knowledge that some truths must remain forgotten and that certain creations, even when buried, continue to pulse in some hidden corner of the world or within ourselves. If ever you hear, in the distance, the sound of hammering from a place where no forge stands, it may be only the wind, or it may be Elias calling new apprentices. Until our next descent into the shadows of history.